The one thing that brought me onto this film, apart from being the actor and the producer, is the fact that I also wrote the script. So I'm the one who brought the film into it in the first place. So it was basically Milind Rao, who's the director of this film, is Maniratnam sir's associate director, and we both started our careers together as assistant directors 16 years ago. So we've been friends, we've been watching a lot of films together, and we've been collaborators where we've been thinking of working together for years. And the one genre that we both love the most is horror. And we kind of, I would say, grew up as filmmakers watching a lot of horror in cinemas and at home, together as friends and as collaborators. And we always asked ourselves, why don't we make a proper horror film in this country that we can show to our friends in the US or in Southeast Asia or in Australia or Europe? And we kept asking this question, and then we said, why don't we just make it ourselves? So we started writing the film, and it took a long time to finish. So this film's been in creation for about 4.5 years, because that's how long the script took a long time. And the final film, we started shooting it at the end of last year, and since then it's been quite hectic. And what excites me most about this film is that I can say with my collar up that this is the best horror film you've seen in this country in a long time. And I know there's not been a great history of horror here, but I hope this starts a new trend, and there are many filmmakers and many people in the audience who just love real scary horror films. So The House Next Door is going to be the first of many in that. As a kid growing up, my mother exposed me to a lot of cinema. So I've started watching fairly mature cinema when I was 5 years old, because my mom and I were best friends from that age. So horror was a genre that we used to go with our friends and watch in the cinema. So I remember watching Omen in the theatres when I was 10 years old, which is quite bizarre. And I also saw The Exorcist when it re-released in theatres in Chennai. So growing up was the classical Hollywood films. So I would say William Friedkin's Exorcist was a very, very important influence for me. But more recently, Milind and I are both huge fans of Southeast Asian horror, specifically South Korean horror, and even before that, Japanese horror. So Hideo Nakata, who made the original Ringu, is a huge influence. So when we wanted to make our horror film, we want to do two things, because this whole thing of original is a very misused word, not just in our country but everywhere else. There is such a thing as an original creation, I understand, but it's impossible to be original without having I'm 38 years old, so I've been watching films for 33 years of that. And all the films I make are part of my education and part of my inspiration. So subconsciously they exist inside me. So one, we wanted to make a horror film where we pay an homage, or we say thanks to all the filmmakers who taught us what horror is and who scared us. And secondly, we wanted to create a face or an aesthetic or a style of horror that is unique to this film and unique to our country. So that's why House Next Door is very exciting, because it's a film that we would love to show our contemporaries abroad and say this is our horror. And more recently, like I said, the South Korean films like Tale of Two Sisters and stuff like that really inspired us. But also the recent trend of horror, not just in India but all over the world, came from two people principally. One is the Blumhouse film company, who makes pretty spectacular horror films, and of course James Wan, who made the Conjuring series. So these films brought back a new fascination for horror into the country. There are two reasons for this. One is there's a lot of research that went into it. Yes, the film is based on a true story, and it's not a gimmicky thing, in the sense that people would ask, well, how can it be a horror film and be a true story? It's not that the entire film is a documentary. No. The root of the film is based in reality. It's based on something that happened to people we know, and it's based on a place that we visited. And so we took that as the root of the story. And from there, when you start developing and you start fictionalizing the screenplay, we've taken lots of liberties to make it what we call the scariest film ever made in this country. So the time it took was for two reasons. One, because like I said, it's based in reality, so research took a long time. I learned something as a filmmaker, as an actor, as a producer, as a writer on this film, which is that when Milind and I were making this film, it took us a long time to be exactly sure that we were doing what we wanted to do. Because other genres, when you're shooting it on set or when you see it in the edit, you get a fair idea of whether it's doing justice to what you set out to do. But with horror, it's not enough to just write it. It's not enough to just shoot it. You have to do the sound, you have to do the background score, you have to do the VFX and the grade. And only when you see all of it together, you're like, ab tasalli hogi. Now I know I've done what I wanted. So that takes time. Getting scared is a lot of fun, and scaring people is a lot of hard work. And it took a lot of work, and I believe that we have a lot of pride when we present this film we didn't just make a film because we wanted to make a horror film. And it's kind of become a joke in this country to make horror films because they're either horror comedies or they're full of sex.
Exactly.
And neither of them is scary unless you find sex or comedy scary. The actual horror is not really scary. So I wanted to make a film with my collaborator Milind, and when you see this film, his vision is so immaculate about this genre. We wanted to make people jerk in their seats. We wanted to make people gasp. We wanted to see people scream together, because I always say this. People say love is a drug and laughter is a great medicine and all that. Being scared and horror is an incredible high. It's an incredible drug. You always go back for more. And I've watched films in the theater where the whole theater screams together, and it's awesome to go with your friends and watch their reactions. It's awesome to just to be part of that atmosphere. So when we made this film, we wanted to make a scary film, and coincidentally enough, we tested the film with an audience, and it was fun to watch their reactions. And the next day, we were told some great news, because I think you might have read about this. The projectionist told us that they needed to tighten the seats again because everybody kept jerking back in their seat. So that's awesome. And so when you come out and say, I'm bahut dar gaya, that's something I'm hoping to hear. And people go back for more, And in this country, so far, we have not seen spectacularly scary films. Yeah. Yes, there have been some good films, 2 good films, particularly from Ramu, Bhoot and Raat, both films I tremendously enjoyed growing up. But more recently, it's not really been the case. We've been more fed and satisfied only with international horror. Milind and I, as writers, we said we wouldn't reveal this, but one of us is a believer and one of us is a non-believer. Okay. So this film also deals with that. Okay. And I always tell people that it's exciting to watch films where whatever your belief is, the film should make you think about it. It should make you challenge it. And The House Next Door will make you question your beliefs. So let's say, hypothetically, let's say you're a believer in the supernatural. You will be made to question that belief. Let's say you're a rationalist who only believes in science. You will be made to question that belief. That's how life is, because it takes 1 second for belief to switch and be flipped on its head. Right. So I will say this much. One of the 2 writers believes a lot in the supernatural. One of the 2 writers is extremely rationalist and scientific. So when the film came together, there were lots of arguments, and we fought for 4.5 years. And that's the reason the film is so detailed and so layered and has so many points of view when you watch it. I always say this, and this is a very important case study, not just for me as a filmmaker, but also for this industry as a whole. If you look at the research and you look at the statistics, there is literally only one genre where it doesn't matter who the star of the film is. There's literally only one genre where it doesn't matter when you release it. There's only one film where it doesn't matter how much marketing you do, and that's horror. So before the word commercial comes in, and which I think is a very stupid word. It's a euphemism for I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So when somebody tells me in Indian cinema, ye commercial picture hai, main bolta hu, aap zara chup raho, please. It's none of, you should just keep your mouth shut. Because one thing is flooding 10,000 theatres with the same film. Even if it's a shit film, everybody will watch it. That's not called commercial theatre, the cinema. That's some other nonsense. That's stupid business. But if you look at a film where once the first show is over, and only the only genre that kind of multiplies on itself is horror. And so I think it is the most commercial genre. So as a producer and as somebody who's done close to 30 films as a lead actor, there's specific reasons why I chose this film as my 4th Hindi film, or this film as a film to produce. Because I think it's, I don't like that word, like I said, I think it's supremely entertaining. And I think it's a film that once it comes out, and once the reviews come in, I think it should be called a commercial film, because everybody's going to like it and pay good money to watch it. I think principally, as a person who loves being on film sets, I can tell you film sets are really fascinating and strange places. And any film shoot can be a horror experience irrespective of the genre of the film. And any shoot experience can be a comedy irrespective of the genre of the film. But the difference in when you're shooting a horror film is that people tend to get spooked much easier. Right. So because also the way Milind and I work, we're slightly intense filmmakers in the sense that because we've been best friends for so many years and we've written this together, and he's very, very specific about the way he likes to make his film. So it was a very, very tightly run set, and so everybody was always kind of on edge because we work in a certain pace, and also you're working with supernatural elements in the film, and you're working in the cold in the mountains in Himachal, and it's snowing outside, and people are cold, and there's mist coming out of your mouth. In general, all of this adds to a very spooky atmosphere. So for me, the toughest part was letting them know that there's nothing wrong with the set and that we can go back to work, and that happened most of the time. The difficult part was working with a child on set, and I don't like exploiting a child just because it's a film, because that's not how you should do that. The child is a child. So we had to make sure we took extra care that the little kid was not scared, and that takes a while. And she did a great job. She championed. She came out like a real rock star. And so the overall experience for me, because I was shooting under such difficult conditions, that was the scariest part. But for me, the actual horror part of it, not so much. But yes, there were incidents on set where anything that happens, they'll blame it on a ghost. That's the other thing we've worked on in this film. I don't like... this is a very important point to talk about. I'm not a big fan of bloated VFX films, because I get so bored when I look on the screen and I know that 98% of it is not real.
Right.
And I know that you can say that, no, that's because you're a filmmaker and you know the technicalities. No, I think even as an audience, after a point, you know that the whole of Mars is not exploding and falling on one guy's face in Jupiter while Thor goes and does something else. I mean, I grew up reading comic books, but when I watch the films, I'd like to watch the story of it. I'd like to watch the characters of it. I'd like to watch the action of it, not just the spectacle.
True.
So when we were making The House Next Door, we knew there would be VFX in the film, but the VFX had to be organic. So, and also we are independent filmmakers. I didn't set out to make this ginormous film. I set out to make a really scary film. So if you've seen my trailer, every time you jerked, there is VFX involved. And if you jerked, it means the VFX worked. And I'd like to believe there's the best kind of VFX, and I know this is a big claim, but in general, the best kind of VFX is the VFX you can't tell is VFX. And I think that's only independent cinema can do that. It's great. Because with Hollywood films and the bigger budget films and all these big giant spectacle magnum opus, they have the budgets to do pretty much everything in VFX. So I mean, there's no thrill in that for me. When I saw the first finished copy of The House Next Door, I felt the VFX was where it needed to be. Will we get better in the next film? I think so, because we've written a couple of sequels. So when we make the next one, because the film was originally conceived with a lot of international technicians, and that's why we worked with a lot of consultants. I had friends in Canada help me with a lot of design for both VFX and makeup. I had a lot of friends in LA help me with a lot of the technicalities. So I believe that once we make pay dirt with this film, the next time we'll be able to involve a lot more people and take the film further into international waters. And that's where I think VFX becomes even more interesting, because they're used to spectacular VFX.
Right.
And you can't mess with them.
True.
Indians, I think in general, are used to for VFX, because VFX is used as a tool to rescue things here usually. So we've not done that. Our VFX was on the script. So whatever VFX number of seconds was on the script written before in time. So we were fine. And as a producer, thankfully that was okay too. See, let me give you a very simple metaphor. Everything you hear about this many films releasing and all of that, right? It has nothing to do with the people making the films, first of all. For example, I'll give you the reason I believe this. Unless you're not prepared for an exam, you don't really care what the person sitting next to you is writing. He's also writing his exam on the same day. Correct? So I think you're prepared with your exam, you're going to get aapko extra sheet chahiye, extra sheet milegi. So I think Indian cinema is big enough for these kind of releases. And all this is also left up to the people, fortunately or unfortunately, who handle distribution and who do that. So it's their game. On the first show, if the film is good, it's going to be in theatres. If the film is bad, it's not going to be in theatres. It doesn't matter. So I think Ittefaq and Ribbon and House Next Door, I'm sure all the filmmakers have worked equally hard on these films, because there's no such thing as इस film में मैंने काम ही नहीं किया. Whether it's a good film, bad film, whatever genre, it takes a lot of work to make films. And Ittefaq is coming out of a legacy production house, and it's got actors who are very popular. Ribbon is Kalki, who's a wonderful artist, and House Next Door is a team that I'm passionate about. So I hope all the films are good and they all do well, because going by the recent trend, I don't think people are going to the cinemas too much to watch a film if they don't like it. So you can't force people to watch nonsense. And so it's good. I mean, it's a good trend that the films that do well, and the films that don't, unfortunately, don't. As far as I'm concerned, November 3rd is a good release date for all the three films. And I wish all of us the best of it. I'm actually, right now I have 3 films that are under production, which I'm kind of really tired. I need to finish them hopefully by February, and I need to take a break. But after that, I'm starting my next slate. We've already started writing quite a few films up, because we've got a young group of writers who sit and almost set up a kind of young writing group.
Right.
that does all sorts of ridiculous ideas also sound very good. And we've also got the sequels of this film ready on the cards. So we'll see.